there are two key theories with regards to why we are overweight. It is strictly a consequence of a caloric imbalance. On the other hand, it's that there is an imbalance in hormones, in particular the hormone insulin. Now, both of these theories, the caloric and the endocrine theory, account for energy that comes in, and both of them account for energy that comes out. And on the caloric side, however, it's just as simple as that. You use it or you store it, and if you're taking in more than you're using, well, then the outcome is as you'd expect. The organism is taking in more energy, and in the case of the human, we're getting fatter. On the endocrine side, it's slightly more complicated. It assumes that we are not perfect thermodynamic machines. Energy must be told what to do, like a naughty little kid. And in this case, among many hormones, insulin really does stand above the rest. And when insulin is elevated over normal sort of baseline homeostatic levels, insulin will tell the system, tell the adipocyte specifically, expand the influx of energy and reduce the efflux of energy. And as you would expect, the system gets bigger on that side as well.
When insulin is elevated above normal, it tells the system, expand the influx of energy and reduce the efflux of energy. Thus, the system gets bigger.
There is some overlap insofar as both of them have to account for calories. And so there's some overlap, and many people would be willing to admit that degree of overlap. And on the caloric side, the story begins and ends with storing it or using it. That is, a purist when it comes to thermodynamics would say the energy has to be stored or used, and thus there has to be a perfect accounting of it. You can almost tally it up. However, what I'm going to show you, and why this might be a little provocative, is that the endocrine theory actually encompasses, I would say, almost all of the caloric theory. And that's why you can be an endocrine theory advocate. And really, what I'm going to show you is have some wonderful defense against someone who tries to beat you over the head with the idea that it's just a pure numbers game. It's not really. But as the caloric theory is somewhat encompassed in the endocrine theory, that means the endocrine theory has to, in and of itself, account for some storage and usage of energy. And it does, as I'll show you. Part of how it does that is the nature of our fat tissue. We have fat tissue, of course, all over the body. Fat tissue can act a little differently in different environments. So we're going to talk about these two variables in particular. And when we talk about the nature of fat tissue, I'm going to show you how the endocrine theory substantially changes how energy is used. So here are the players. I'm telling you a story. These are the characters in the story. The liver is a very important character in anything metabolic, and beyond, mind you. And then two types of body fat that all humans have: white adipose tissue and brown adipose tissue. And in fact, it actually looks like that. It is really white or it is quite brown when you pull it out of a human or any other mammal. And then the other two characters you're all very familiar with: the hormone insulin, the ketones. Now, they're not the same. Insulin's a hormone and ketone is a metabolite. But they're remarkably related. White adipose tissue is concerned with storing energy. Brown adipose tissue is interested in thermoregulation. In other words, if brown adipose tissue has its way, it's doing nothing but creating heat. And this is something, then when we look at them, they're quite contrasting. On one hand, white adipose tissue wants to store energy. And then on the other hand, we have this other adipose tissue, brown adipose, that wants to use it.
White adipose tissue wants to store energy or build body fat. Brown adipose tissue wants to use energy or burn body fat.
But appreciate that in the typical caloric model, we consider energy use as something really that just the muscles are doing. But I'm telling you, there's a type of fat tissue that we all have that actually is also interested in just using energy. So white adipose is storing it, brown adipose is using it.
White adipose tissue wants to store energy or build body fat. Brown adipose tissue wants to use energy or burn body fat. Annotated and summarized. Easy to share with loved ones. The description below the title for this video has these summary points. The caloric model. If taking in more energy than using, you gain fat mass. The endocrine model.
The energy we intake must be told what to do. When insulin is elevated above normal, it tells the system, expand the influx of energy and reduce the efflux of energy. Thus, the system gets bigger. In the caloric model, the story begins and ends with storing it or using it. You can actually tally it up. The endocrine model encompasses almost all of the caloric model. You can defend that it is not just a numbers game. We have fat tissue all over our body. It acts differently in different environments. The endocrine theory substantially changes how energy is used. Insulin is a hormone. Ketones are metabolites. They are remarkably related. White adipose tissue wants to store energy or build body fat. Brown adipose tissue wants to use energy or burn body fat. In the caloric model, energy use is only done by the muscles, but we all have a type of fat tissue that wants to use energy.